Some people don't eat because they're hungry. They eat because something inside them feels empty. Maybe you felt it before. You open the fridge, not because your stomach asked, but because your mind is tired, because your chest feels heavy, because something feels missing and you don't even know what it is. And for a few minutes, while you're chewing, everything becomes quiet. The stress softens. The loneliness fades. The overthinking pauses. Food becomes more than food. It becomes comfort, distraction, control, relief. But here's the part most people never talk about. Why do some people stop when they're full, while others feel like they can never fill what they're actually trying to satisfy? And the answer has very little to do with food. It has everything to do with psychology. Because overeating is often not about hunger. It's about what hunger represents. And by the end of this video, you might understand the part of yourself you never connected before. Especially if you've ever asked yourself, why do I eat even when I know I shouldn't? Imagine this. It's late at night. Everyone else is asleep. The house is quiet. Your responsibilities are finally done. And for the first time all day, you can finally breathe. So you grab something small to eat, maybe just a snack. But then something strange happens. One snack becomes two becomes three, and suddenly you're not even tasting the food anymore. You're just eating, almost automatically. And the small voice in your head says, you should stop. But another voice answers, just one more. And afterwards comes the familiar feeling, not just fullness, but guilt, confusion, sometimes even shame. You promise yourself, tomorrow I'll have more control. But tomorrow comes and somehow the same cycle repeats. If this sounds familiar, there is a psychological reason for it. Actually, several. And most of them started long before the eating itself. Psychology shows that many people who struggle with overeating aren't weak. They're often emotionally strong people who learn to cope alone. People who didn't always have someone to talk to. People who learned to manage stress internally. People who became their own support system. And when emotional needs go unmet, the brain looks for substitutes, not consciously, automatically. Because the brain has one main job, reduce discomfort. And food is one of the fastest ways to do that. Here's why. When you eat certain foods, especially sugar and high-carb foods, your brain releases dopamine. Dopamine isn't just a pleasure chemical, it's a relief chemical. It tells your nervous system, you're safe right now. Even if nothing actually changed, even if the real problem is still there. For a moment, your body believes things are okay. And if someone grew up in an environment where emotional comfort was inconsistent, their brain may have learned something very early. Relief must be created alone. Sometimes that relief became food. Pause for a second and think about this question. When do you usually overeat? Is it when you're celebrating? Or is it when you're stressed, tired, lonely, overwhelmed, mentally exhausted? For many people, overeating happens after emotional pressure, not before, because food becomes a way to decompress. Some people drink, some people scroll endlessly, some people overwork, others eat. Different behavior, same psychology, self-soothing. Here's something surprising most people never realize. Many people who overeat are actually highly controlled individuals. They hold things in. They stay calm under pressure. They avoid burdening others. They try to be responsible. And that pressure has to go somewhere. So when the outside world finally goes quiet, the inside world finally speaks. And often it speaks through cravings. Not because the body is starving, because the mind is tired of being strong. Let's go deeper. There is a pattern psychologists sometimes notice. People who didn't always feel emotionally filled growing up sometimes try to fill that sensation physically. Not intentionally, symbolically. If affection was limited, if validation was rare, if emotional safety felt unpredictable, the nervous system sometimes learns a strange association. Full stomach equals safe feeling. Empty feeling equals danger. So the behavior isn't random. It's learned safety. And that changes how you see overeating. It stops looking like lack of discipline and starts looking like emotional adaptation. Think about this scenario. A child comes home upset. Maybe they were ignored. Maybe they felt invisible. Maybe they were told to stop being sensitive. But later, someone offers them a treat. Candy, bread, something sweet. And for a moment, they feel better. Not because the problem was solved, because their brain connected something. Pain equals food equals relief. Now, imagine that repeated quietly over years. That pattern can follow someone into adulthood without them realizing it. Not as a conscious choice, as emotional muscle memory. Here's another hidden reason some people eat too much. Control. This surprises people because overeating looks like losing control. But psychologically, it can actually come from needing control. If someone grew up in chaos, unpredictable environments, emotional instability, they may have had very few things they could control. But food? Food is predictable, accessible, private. No one can interfere with it. It becomes something that belongs only to you, your decision, your timing, your comfort. So sometimes overeating isn't about losing control. It's about finally feeling it, even just for a moment. Pause and reflect again. When do you usually eat the fastest? When you're around people or when you're alone? Many emotional eaters eat differently in private because the behavior isn't about appetite. It's about emotional permission. Alone feels safer. No judgment, no expectations, no emotional performance. Just you and temporary relief. Another hidden psychological layer, emotional numbness. Some people don't overeat because they feel too much. They overeat because they feel too little. After long stress periods, burnout, or emotional shutdown, people sometimes feel flat, disconnected. Food can temporarily bring sensation back. Taste, texture, warmth. It makes you feel something, and sometimes something feels better than nothing. Real life example. You might know someone like this. The reliable friend. Always available, always listening, always helping. But when they go home, they collapse into habits that look self-destructive. Not because they don't know better, because they're empty from giving, and they never learned how to refill emotionally. So they refill physically. Here comes the twist most people never expect. Many people who overeat are not lacking willpower. They are lacking emotional recovery. If someone spends all day managing stress, people, expectations, and internal pressure, their brain eventually demands compensation, and it usually chooses the fastest reward available. Food is fast. Food is legal. Food is accessible. Food doesn't reject you, and that matters more than people think. But here's the realization that changes everything. The real question isn't, why do I eat so much? The real question is, what does eating do for me emotionally? Because when people answer that honestly, they often discover something surprising. Maybe it gives them peace. Maybe it gives them silence. Maybe it gives them a break from thinking. Maybe it gives them comfort they never ask others for. And once you see the purpose, you stop fighting the behavior blindly. You start understanding it. And understanding always reduces shame. Let's have one last reflection moment. Ask yourself quietly, when I overeat, what feeling disappears temporarily? Stress? Loneliness? Pressure? Self-criticism? Now ask the deeper question. Where else could that relief come from? Not replacing food overnight, just expanding your options. Because healing rarely starts with restriction. It starts with awareness. Here's something important you deserve to hear. If you struggle with overeating, it doesn't automatically mean you lack discipline. It may mean you carried emotional weight silently for a long time. It may mean you adapted the best way you knew how. It may mean your nervous system found a survival strategy. And survival strategies aren't failures. They're evidence you tried to cope. The real growth isn't forcing yourself to be perfect. It's slowly building new ways to feel safe, new ways to decompress, new ways to feel comfort emotionally. Because when emotional needs start getting met, physical compensation often starts decreasing naturally, not through punishment, through replacement. And maybe the most human truth of all, sometimes people who eat the most are the ones who felt the least emotionally fed. Not always, but often. And that realization deserves compassion, not criticism. So if you see yourself in this story, maybe the question isn't, what's wrong with me? Maybe the better question is, what did I go through that taught me this? Because behavior always makes sense when you understand the story behind it. And your story is probably deeper than you give yourself credit.
If this made you see yourself differently, then you're already becoming more aware than most people. And awareness is where real change always begins. Subscribe for more.